Cam, what are we talking about today?
Robodebt.
What on earth is that?
Well, we've got the 3D with us. Sorry, 3D, that's not right. I really miss the days when everything, like, it was a real 2000s phase when you didn't know if you were creating a YouTube channel or creating something or a new TV show and you felt that just labeling it with descriptive terms wasn't enough. You'd finish it with 3D, HD, 360.
Yeah.
Like, I really feel like NRL 360 is the last remaining group that uses that as a concept.
Yeah.
AFL 360.
As an AFL 360
so.
as well.
No holds barred.
Well, yes. Visually, extra sense that you can see. I was going to do a guess who's PY, guess who's Ben before you, but yeah, obviously.
The voice kind of gives it away.
Yes. So we are doing Robodebt today, and to prove that we are not, this isn't just AI gone crazy, because that's how I've heard Robodebt described. Didn't use AI at all, but that's besides the point.
No, I'm excited to learn about Robodebt. I feel like it's one of those things that I just know fragments of information about, but enough to get really like outraged. So, we're like, I feel like you've seen the Friendly Geordies video, right? Like, or the couple of them.
That
he
there's a few, isn't
there?
there?
Yeah. Like, I feel like that's just the sort of the depth of my knowledge on the topic. And I remember at the time being really grumpy and outraged about it. But I don't really know why right now. So keen to learn.
So yeah, by the time this podcast comes out, I will have uploaded a main channel video on it.
Okay.
The one who I think covers it even better than Friendly Geordies, not by terms of quality, but in terms of quantity, is a guy called Knights in Shining Llama. So shout out to him.
I like it.
We have done a collab before, way back when. So
What'd you do?
Friend of the channel, Billy Hughes, World War One. He came on the channel to talk about conscription. So he does like niche Australian politics. Like,
Cool.
Stays away from the culture war, just goes into the policies. He broke down so the Royal Commission had like hours upon hours of coverage, and he broke everyone down into a 1 hour video that came out every week to summarizing the best of the Royal Commission. So
Wow, what a guy.
yeah. So go check him out. Really rate Knights in Shining Llama. He also congratulated us when we started the podcast as well. So he supports the podcast. And
It's just friends.
Yeah.
his research I have used a lot of his research, and he's done a lot of the heavy lifting
I
here.
just lost my voice there.
And so we're just going to talk about it and probably make silly 360 jokes along the way. So
Very good.
do you remember do you remember the first time you learnt what the doll was in your life?
What the doll was. No, actually, it's
I think I do, actually. So
Sorry, this sounds so privileged. I was 18 when I learned that you got welfare.
I'm just like, Mum, why don't they live in as nice a house as us? Yeah. There was like a niche. The football oval to the 7-Eleven. There was a shortcut. If you go through the apartments, they were housing commission.
Okay. Yeah.
So I started going to 7-Eleven, getting my Slurpee, and then some of the older kids are like, oh, here's a shortcut. But it's through where the doll people live.
where the wild things are.
So that was always just like a bit of a thrilling experience. To kind of, you never knew who you were going to come across or what held abuse you might get. But then also just normal people as well.
Yeah. Like the ones at the train station as well.
That just sounds a bit dramatic. Yeah. It's not really like that.
No, yeah. The ones at the train station along the parking there. Just most of the time, just very, very ordinary people going about their lives. There's nothing. They had a real aura, I feel like, when we first heard about the doll, and then it's just...
Yeah, so you were earlier than me. The way
so.
that I found out...
Late bloomer, were you, to the doll?
Yeah, I was a
camp?
late bloomer. Again, probably showing just what a bubble that I lived in for... Yay, Cartoon Network! Woo! There's nothing bad about life. It was the Google form, or I don't know if it was Google form. Maybe that was a bit before Google Forms came out.
Oh, yeah.
For the Year 10 Formal Awards...
Yeah, I'm with you.
One
Okay, most likely to be on the doll.
I interpreted it as like most likely to get plastic surgery.
Oh, the dole, like
Even though
D-O-double-L.
it wasn't spelled the
Yeah, like,
same.
no, that's just a typo.
Yeah.
That's what they meant.
So yeah,
So I don't think you were a nominee for that award.
I was not nominated for that
Yeah.
award, but yeah, I threw this poor woman under the bus. I mean, I don't know what's like. I don't know if it's that much better to win that award.
Yeah,
Anyway,
true.
but yeah, I imagine whoever moderated that would have got quite the shock seeing this rather high achieving girl get this rogue nomination from the guy that like doesn't really talk that much. So.
Yeah, so you're like 16 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, that's government welfare. What's that? So, yeah.
Look how far you've come.
No, yeah, we're going to talk about Robodebt. Do they still do you know, if you're on the Year 10 formal scene at all, do they still do formal awards? Is that still...
Yeah, we got a housemate that's a bit younger than us who won best legs.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. I don't know. So I feel that's recent enough.
I don't know. I'm like...
It's like, or do you think it's like how they stopped gender bender?
Well, yeah, but I think for this one, it's like one of three possibilities. You're either promoting jealousy, you're promoting vanity, or you're like singling someone out, or you're just kind of making someone feel really self-conscious about something.
But our formal was never run by the school.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. So I don't like you wouldn't have done awards, would you, Ben?
No.
Yeah.
They were-
Ours was entirely, centralized, if you will. Yeah. No.
A night of dancing and fun under the stars.
Yeah. No, it was brutal. It was like worst park, like worst driver, all of that. There was very few positive awards,
Yeah.
and the only positive awards were extremely...
Never got one.
No,
Yeah.
nor did I. So, yeah, I don't know, just keen to see if the Year 10 formal scene had changed at all in the 11 years since I've been in Year 10. We are going to talk Robodebt today, and the story begins with the GFC. And we can find the origins with Wayne Swan.
Wow. The boy.
How will he emerge in this story? Will he be a
Wow,
villain, or will he be a...
I'd sure hope not, to be honest. Not Wayne.
So we come to the story. We have obviously the GFC that happens. In response to the GFC, Kevin Rudd and Wayne Swan start their kind of huge stimulus package spending plan. There's two main stimulus packages. When the government was run by John Howard, do you know what word John Howard used to constantly describe a healthy economy?
Just one word.
One word. Starts with an S.
Stimulated?
No, it's the opposite. Surplus. Which is when you think about it, probably the opposite of stimulated.
Buzzword.
So he kept going on about how we need a government surplus, which is when at the end of the financial year, for anyone that kind of missed that time of life, at the end of the financial year, you have more money in the bank account than what you spent throughout the year. Now,
Well put.
if you think about it, that is kind of saying we are going to take more than we're going to give to you. So we have taken more tax resources from you than we have given back to you in return. So,
What are they going to do with the surplus?
well, save it for a rainy day. And this is why John Howard looks really good, because when the GFC came, that surplus was really handy. And the fact that Kevin Rudd could go and spend it, and in my opinion, spent it really well, the fact that Kevin Rudd could go and spend it was partly because Howard had left a huge surplus in the bank account. So what had happened is, in the era of John Howard and Peter Costello, the idea of a surplus and good economic management went hand in hand together. And in kind of the consciousness, and probably this would be pretty common amongst particularly our parents' generation, how do you measure if economy is doing well? Well, is the budget in surplus or is it in deficit? Do you save, or spend? Which is a really simplistic way to look at economic success. I agree with Paul Keating's argument that a better metric is structural surplus versus structural deficit. Left alone, we're not accounting for any kind of one-off spending. Is the budget going to leave itself in a surplus? Like, are you going to create a surplus for yourself? Or if you're left alone, is it going to create a deficit for itself? Which I think is far more important. With that surplus, John Howard also could do things like massive tax cuts, which is also why our parents probably love him a lot, is because they got some pretty massive tax cuts under John Howard. Point being, in the era of John Howard, that is how you define economic success. When Kevin Rudd and Wayne Swan came in, that surplus vanished straight away. Well, they had 2008, they had a surplus, but then after the 2008 financial year, by 2009, they went into deficit. And then in 2010, they went into deficit. And for the first 2 years, people were like, oh yeah, fair enough, GFC. 2011, we were still in deficit. Now, at that point, I would hope that you'd go like global financial crisis. Maybe not a 2 year, like back to the Howard days straight away. We've come out unscathed. This is the only real hangover we have from the GFC. We don't have any of the structural banking issues that America has. We don't have any of the structural banking issues that Britain has. We've come out pretty okay. We'll take the deficit.
Yeah.
But the idea of surplus was so synonymous with good economic management that Labor went chasing the surplus. So Wayne Swan, now under Julia Gillard's leadership, quite foolishly made the promise that Labor would get the budget back into surplus for 2012, 2013. They did not. And then Wayne Swan had to walk it back, apologise, and say, yeah, we couldn't bring it back into surplus. Of course, if you're like your basic kind of Australian male over the age of 40 at that point, all Labor does is spend, spend, spend.
I remember being, I was at a Sharks game with a friend called Ben. We were arguing about politics. I think we must have been like 17 at the time.
Your blood diamond face.
And, and he said that all Labor does is spend, spend, spend. So, yeah, it's true. The people, the masses are crying out.
Yeah, like and then ScoMo was in the box next to him. Yeah. So that became so synonymous with economic success. So Wayne Swan failed to deliver it. And then by 2013, they were like, stuff it. We're not getting voted back in anyway. Let's just create massive economic infrastructure like the NDIS. So then they put the budget into a massive, massive deficit to create the NDIS. So that takes us to Tony Abbott. And that's the way that Wayne Swan has left the economy. In quite a big deficit, I would argue with a lot of good future infrastructure projects like the NDIS built. I would argue that Wayne Swan particularly handled the GFC really well, but then struggled to communicate what he'd done to the public in the second term that Labor had. Labor gets voted out quite convincingly in 2013. Kevin Rudd probably saved around about 20 seats, it's estimated, but they still got smashed by Abbott's Liberals, but it could have been much worse. And so Tony Abbott was in. My confession, I loved Tony Abbott when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I was just like, he just rocks the budgie smugglers, like in the RFS. Like he was, I don't know, in my very simplistic, this was again before my cultured blood diamond phase. I was like, this guy, he gets it. He gets the Australian people.
He just, eats onions just like an apple. That's so much aura.
I was probably brought up on Sky News as well, just to probably clarify that. So no matter how much I've been persuaded by Labor's arguments over time, you can't take the Sky News out of the boy. But Tony Abbott came in 2013. We fast forward to 2014 and he's got to deliver his first budget in 2014. Now, one of Tony Abbott's key campaign promises is that he was going to put the budget
surplus
back into surplus. And
I wonder what their strategies are to do that.
well, if you just think about it logically, you either have to hike up prices, so you got to raise revenue, hike up taxes, I should say, or you cut spending. So they're your two measures.
And he's promised it.
And he's promised it.
Wow.
Now, Tony Abbott goes, well, we'll stop some taxes, which is like, no, you need to do the opposite if you want to make revenue. So two big taxes he ditches. One is the carbon tax, which he promised to do and was really popular, even though it generated quite a decent amount of revenue for the government. And the carbon tax was political suicide for Gillard. The second one was the mining tax. So if you remember from the Rudd and Gillard episodes we did, there was the super profits mining tax, which Kevin Rudd tried to introduce. That led to partially him partially was one of the reasons why he was ousted, because that was really unpopular with the mining lobby and Labor didn't want to antagonise the mining lobby. So then Gillard comes in and Gillard waters it down quite a fair bit. But it still generated a lot of revenue because we're in the mining boom. And by taxing these mega companies like Rio Tinto, we can still make a fair bit of money. But Abbott comes in and he's like, ditch the carbon tax, ditch the mining super profits tax. It's like, well, how are you going to get the budget back into surplus? It's like, well, we're just going to cut our spending. And he ran what we called, I don't know if you remember from the UK episode, an austerity budget. So
shock therapy.
Shock therapy. It was, the Russia one. An austerity budget is essentially when you cut spending quite significantly during economic hardship to kind of balance the budget. The reality is that probably prolongs an economic crisis for longer because you're not stimulating the economy at all.
And also 2014 wasn't really economically trying time, was it?
which is an argument I'm sympathetic to as to why that would be a more appropriate time to do it. So cut the spending from a position of strength so that you don't have rapid inflation.
Yeah.
But yeah, he promised it, and in the first budget, he actually expanded the deficit. So yeah, Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey couldn't deliver the surplus, yet they still cut to all sorts of services, particularly Medicare being one of the big ones, because they couldn't make up the money that they lost from the mining tax and from the carbon tax.
They promised it.
Crazy how nature be doing
They
that.
promised it. So if you're Joe Hockey and you're Tony Abbott, what's your kind of political move here?
Labor dug us into a hole that was too deep.
Bing. Bingo. Bing.
Bing bong.
Bing.
Bing Lee. So, yeah, exactly. So basically the strategy was, well, we can't deliver it. The damage is so bad that we can't deliver it immediately. So we'll do it in 2015. They don't do it in 2015.
Yeah.
2016.
Nah,
They
go
don't
on.
do it in 2016.
Nah.
2017. 2018. 2019.
Oh.
2020. 2021. 2022. It took till 2023 to get the budget back into surplus.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
really.
I didn't even know we were back in surplus. There you go.
Like
Happy days.
Nominally.
Economic success.
Again, and Labor. Where I disagree with the strategy was Labor. Maybe necessary deal with the devil. So Jim Chalmers kind of trumpeted around that Labor brought the budget back into surplus.
Who's the devil?
Well, just the fact that you're kind of conflating surplus with economic success.
I see.
So he's playing the Liberals' game basically by boasting of that.
Because 2023 was the time it went into surplus. We were under a Labor government.
Yeah. So basically, I think it's tactically a big risk because the Liberals are going to be able to play that game far better than Labor will, because Liberals will just be able to kind of outline where they're cutting spending quite significantly. Whereas for a Labor government to cut spending is to actually alienate their voting base that vote for them on the promise of we need more spending to public services. But point being, that was the big promise. And so 2014, Abbott and Hockey couldn't put the budget back into a surplus, which meant in 2015, there was a lot of pressure on Tony Abbott. This was on my fridge, the day of my fridge to fridge. Malcolm Turnbull came in, the day before my fridge to fridge. It was all the conversation at my fridge to fridge.
Good to know that even amongst all the inebriation, you guys still have room for political discourse.
Cultured ultras.
So I was perfectly sober on my fridge to fridge, and there was one other guy that was perfectly sober on my fridge to fridge. We didn't really talk that much, but we kind of had an alliance of well, look, we're both not going to drink here. So, we talked Malcolm Turnbull, and I'm like, we should have had Tony Abbott. Did Malcolm Turnbull do nippers? Abbott had the ultimate way of managing his Sunday. He went to mass and got to nippers on the same day.
Wow, really?
How did he do it?
How did you fit that in?
People talk about single mothers. Like, how do they juggle all of it? Talk to Tony Abbott. How did he juggle nippers and mass on a Sunday morning?
That's actually crazy.
Anyway.
He needs bloody Hermione Granger's little time turner thing in order to...
Yeah.
I don't know how he's making that happen.
If you gotta get the time turner, that's the number one way to actually get down to nippers.
Yeah, it's the first thing I'm doing with it.
I'm just seeing him stroll into mass with the cap on and the swimmer still.
So 2015, he gets ousted by Turnbull. But by that point, pressure had been growing. He passed the 2015 budget as well. Pressure was growing within the Liberal Party to be like, you promised you'd get us back in a surplus. We're going to lose our seats if you don't deliver. Because people go well, Liberal didn't deliver on that one promise that we elected them back in for. And so obviously, because you're held accountable to your caucus in terms of the leadership, that's representative MPs that will get skittish if they think they're going to lose their seat because of the leader. So Abbott gets ousted. But under Abbott, Scott Morrison was the Minister for Human Services. And Morrison, in kind of the dying days of the Abbott government, comes to Tony Abbott and says, hey, I have a plan for how we can recuperate some of that money. We're probably looking at about $4.5 billion that we can recuperate out of a budget deficit that sometimes grew to about $50 billion. So it's only 10%. It's marginal gains, but it's something.
Yeah.
Now, what also doesn't matter is it doesn't really matter if they get into surplus or into deficit that much, because if they can just point to where they're cutting spending or where they're gaining money, that's going to play well in the eyes of the public. Now, if you're going to gain money...
So we're working on it,
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
doing our best, our personal best, if you will. And That's all we can do. Yeah.
Around at that time, Scott Morrison would have been at our primary school with the personal best orange pencil right there.
Yeah, do you reckon he sort of like? Do you reckon as he walking the kids in and stuff, like he sort of walks past the pencils
these are
there,
the values we need.
yeah, like hand on chest, just sort of like silently nods at them, and then continues about his day. Integrity.
Oh man! So Scott Morrison
Fairness.
is the Minister for Human Services, and he's like, okay, here's how we can recuperate $4.5 billion. He goes to cabinet with this proposal, and basically he's like, look, what's the most popular target? If we're going to take money off of a group of people, who would be the most popular people to take that money off? The first answer that we think of is massive corporations, but they're the Liberal Party's database.
Yeah.
They're not going to go antagonize where the purse strings are coming from. So it's like, okay, we obviously can't do that. And obviously I'm kind of bastardizing it a little bit here. I'm putting just a layman's analysis on it. But if it's not going to be corporations, who would be then the next most popular group to take money from? Welfare cheats.
Oh, okay.
I see.
Yeah.
So
I
people
see.
who are defrauding the system.
Yep.
Yeah.
And-
The old bludgers.
Yeah. Gareth Keenan said there should be tests.
I don't know. There should be tests.
Oh, well, there's Gareth. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, like if you
Pins in the leg.
what did you do? Yeah, you have a fire and you say there's a fire, and if they get up and start running, that means they're not disabled.
And you go, come back in, congratulations, here's your check. So obviously welfare cheats are extremely unpopular in every country. And not without good reason. I don't like welfare cheats. Like, don't take the money of Australian people by lying about your condition. But $4.5 billion. Do welfare cheats really defraud $4.5 billion out of the economy? Like, that's a pretty...
It seems hefty. Yeah.
So, yeah. It's a lot of season passes to Jamper, is all I say.
Yeah. I guess you'd think they don't make getting money easy. Right?
Yeah, they don't. Like, you're pretty onerous tests you've got to go through to get Centrelink. Like, I literally know someone who is a family friend, he's not in Australia anymore, but when he was in Australia, thought it was just too much effort to get on the dole. So people would be like, oh, you're unemployed, why don't you get a job? Can't be bothered getting a job? Okay, why don't you get on Centrelink? Oh, it's too many forms.
Fair.
So it's not particularly, it's not just like, sign up, say your birth date is in like 1987 when you're making your like MSN account.
1911, just to be safe, just to like to ensure zero doubt that I'm over 18.
I am Ben 360. I'm sorry, just what does 360 mean? It means nothing. Like, I know the angle is we give all levels of analysis, like that not a stone is left unturned.
Yeah.
But
No, it's an all-encompassing analysis.
Yeah, you see the full picture. You know, you kind of
Yeah.
nothing.
No stone goes unturned.
yeah. Like a 360 degree view is like you're seeing all aspects of your surroundings.
No,
He can't. No, he can't be. He can't be. He can't be told.
Well, it's like my friend. I'm happy to dox him because he's significantly more famous than this podcast is. So Jared HD,
Good lad.
great friend of the channel, FIFA YouTuber. Presumably no crossover between 14-year-olds opening packs in Ultimate Team and people listening to Budget Deficit versus Surplus. But if you are, the macroeconomics apply for both Ultimate Team and for the broader economy as well. But yeah, so he went by Jared HD because that was all the rave in 2011, 2012.
True.
No
Now
doubt.
he's gotten famous, but now HD doesn't mean high quality anymore. You got 4K and 8K.
Jared
like-
8K. You know, it's
So, yeah, to come full circle, it's not easy to get welfare to begin with. But what happened is that the government then said, okay, we are going to crack down on welfare cheats and we're going to make sure that anyone who has put a false claim in, we're going to get that money back off of you and we will give you a debt notice. And again, you're like...
Surely undergoing that investigation will cost a lot of money.
Well, great question. How do you avoid an investigation?
You
Rely on people's values,
you rely on responsibility and integrity.
honesty.
Yeah.
Guys,
These were the values we had in primary school. So
yeah. Well, I might kind of give the full picture here for how they figured it out.
Okay, maybe a 360 view.
I don't know why that's so funny.
Yeah, dear idea.
Callback.
Okay, sorry, 360's in my head now. I'm thrown completely. And now I've got the Rapid 360 also like in there with cursor. So,
That's a name I hadn't thought of in a while.
cursor?
No, 360.
360, yeah. Again, meaningless. But to come full circle, in order to get welfare, you submit your welfare declaration form to the government. And so the government relies, in order to accurately ascertain someone's income, the government relies on two levels of data. The first one is the amount declared directly to Centrelink. So that's from the person. The other is the one provided by the employer. Because most people who receive Centrelink aren't actually unemployed. They're people who just don't have enough work to be able to sustain a reasonable standard of living. So the other method is to go to your employer and